welcome to Food for Thought, episode 21. I feel like it's my 21st birthday today. So today I'm here to talk to Aurelija Aurel about overcoming fear and resistance to self-transformation and doing the inner work as well. So I put a lot of ands in there. I realized there probably could be a comma in that one. So Aurelija is an intuitive emotional energy reader, your soul's ally and your heart's advocate. I will let her introduce herself. Aurelija, if you'd like to let everyone know where you are and what you do, that would be brilliant.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Matt, for having me here. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm in Lithuania, and it's actually really cold, still cold. Spring is coming. So I'm also putting it there because I was sick. I was coughing, so I hope I won't be coughing during our today's show. But if I do, please forgive me. So I'm in Lithuania, and I am intuitively reading people's emotional energy. And actually, when I started to do that, I discovered that in different parts of a body, you have different emotions or emotional information that we hold. And before discovering this, I was thinking, okay, we can kind of sense people's emotions. We can kind of see when somebody's sad, but they pretend to be happy. But actually, our emotional body is a lot more complex, and we have different types of emotional information in different areas of our bodies. And so the work I'm doing is that I'm reading through a person's body, and I just give them the information so we can understand themselves better and look deeper into how they are functioning and why they are functioning in a certain way.
That's awesome, amazing. I find this really interesting. So I've got some questions that have come up myself, which are, so how does that show up for you when you're reading somebody's energy?
I get a lot of visuals, so I get images, I get words sometimes, and for me, the most important thing is to really get into the feeling. So sometimes these images are just a way for me to capture an emotion. And sometimes the images I'm getting are actually corresponding precisely to events people were living in their real life. So I never know which one is it for them. That's why actually the conversation part of my session with people is very important, so that we can understand, is it about an emotion? Is it about a real life event? And what does it mean? And what impact it had on people? And what are the feelings that are still stuck? And what are emotional resistances and blockages? And actually, this is our theme today. I'm really, really interested into the deeper layers of our beings, all of us, myself included. And I really love to work with resistances and blockages because this is where our potential is. If we can find it and unlock it, then things can change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that is what we're here to talk about. So just a couple more questions. So is this something that you've noticed recently or had your whole life, or is it how
I've discovered it. My intuition told me to go and find it in a way. So I was pushed to work with energies, and I had this sentence, work with energies, and I'm like, what do you mean work with energies? I don't know what it's all about. And I was 30 at that time, and I had a boyfriend who would not understand anything about energies. He would tell me, I don't even know what you mean when you say the word energy. But he was actually pretty nice. And when I asked him, could you just sit in front of me for 15 minutes? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to do something, but I don't know what it is. I'm supposed to do something with energies. And he said, okay, I don't understand what you're asking me, but of course I can sit 15 minutes in front of you. And I just learned that if I focus on a part of his body, I can have very precise information, and it just comes to me. And it was pretty intriguing. And after that, I just asked people, like friends around me or friends of friends to do the same thing. And I discovered that there is a system actually, and that we have different points in our body holding different kinds of information, and that I have the ability to access it. So this is not something that comes from my mental space. I just feel that the universe trusted me to, like, granted me the access to some type of information that I can translate or give to people so that they can gain a better understanding about themselves. So it was kind of something that I discovered through my intuition pushing me, and then through working with people. It was a gradual process.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing that. And I love that. And so you said, like, staring at, or by focusing on different parts. So do you get different readings from focusing on different parts of people, do you? Or
So I pretty much focus on the same points in each person's body, but the information I'm getting is pretty different because everybody's different. But I came to understand that each part of the body has a specific type of information. So what I will see there will be different for everybody. But for instance, let's just take solar plexus. For me, on the emotional level, this is the area that deals with our ability to put boundaries or to protect our heart. And how do we do that? Do we fight people when they fight us? Do we hide? Do we remain silent? Do we try to be nice? Like, everybody deals with intrusions, or where everybody puts up their boundaries in different ways. So for me, this area in our body, the solar plexus, is about that on the emotional level. But of course, the information I will get, it depends on the person who's in front of me.
right. Okay. And so fear and resistance is one of the things we're here to talk about today. And so where would fear and resistance show up, or does it show up in different ways for different people?
Oh, so I would like to clarify something about fear, which is extremely important. And I'm not sure that we are all aware of that.
Okay,
So
sure.
a lot of time when we talk about fear, we always imagine an event. We're saying, I'm afraid for this thing to happen, or I'm afraid for this person to say that, or I'm afraid to do this. But what is very, very important is to understand that we are never afraid of things to happen. The only thing we are afraid of is to feel a feeling that we do not know how to deal with. So, for instance, if I'm afraid to, I don't know, go to talk in public, what am I afraid of? The first answer would always be, I'm afraid of, let's say, people to be overly criticizing me, or I am afraid to get negative reactions, or I'm afraid to be ashamed of myself, or whatever it is. And then, so, okay, ashamed is always a feeling. So the question is, if people do that, if this is what happens, what is the feeling I do not want to feel? Because the problem is not the reaction, the problem is the feeling it will put me into. And if the feeling is that I will feel rejected by everybody, I will feel isolated, I will feel whatever it is. So this is the thing I don't want to go into. So it is very, very important to understand that our fear is always about a feeling we cannot stand or we don't know how to deal with.
Right.
And
So
this is the only things that we are afraid of in this lifetime, actually.
So it's not about the thing we're going to do or what we're thinking about, for example. It's about the feeling we may have if it turns out the way we're imagining it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, for example, in one extreme, if it was going into the jungle, the fear could be pain, feeling pain, yeah, of being hurt, of being trapped or alone or in danger. And like you said, for public speaking or business, the fear of failure is really, am I going to be embarrassed? Kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So you just use this example of being afraid of pain. So ultimately, I think that feelings have layers as well. And so ultimately what we are afraid of is to be powerless, to feel powerless. So we can be afraid of a feeling because we do not know how to deal with it. But most of all, we are afraid that this feeling will persist and we will not know how to get out of it. So a lot of times when we are afraid of pain, the feeling is that if this lion attacks me and starts to eat me alive, I will be in pain and I will not be able to control it. I will not be able to stop it. And this feeling of powerlessness is something that is extreme in every person, because we've all been little kids having no power over what experiences we are having. And we all know how it feels to be powerless. We all know how it feels to be hungry and not knowing if somebody will come to feed us. We all know how it feels to be cold and not knowing if somebody will come and take care of us. So this feeling of powerlessness is very, very important. And you know what? Sometimes, like, I don't know if you've noticed that in your life. For instance, if you have pain in your tooth, and it's a kind of an intense pain, and then you kind of start panicking. And if you call your dentist and the dentist says, okay, I can have you in my office in 2 hours, you knowing that you will meet the dentist in 2 hours, it just helps your pain to go down immediately. Why? Because you know that it's not eternal. You know that it will stop. And just the knowing that it will stop brings you out of this place of powerlessness. So the idea of having control and being able to control is something which is very, very important. And there are feelings that we do not know how to control. And so these ones we are really afraid of.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and I like that, because one of the things I've noticed is that awareness is quite a big thing. When I actually just think things through and think about all the possibilities, that can be enough to clear resistance or fear. I don't actually need to do too much. So we came here to talk about fear and resistance, and specifically on the in transformation. Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I kind of got that from our title, but we don't have to. We can stay on fear and resistance. But one of the things is, what do people fear, or that causes them resistance when going on a transformational journey, when looking inwards?
So I believe that our transformational journey is essentially about lifting up the fear. If we can stop being afraid of things, then we gain our freedom. In Lithuanian language, there is a saying that I love a lot. And the saying is, if you're afraid of a wolf, don't go to the forest. Right? So it means that if you are aware that you cannot deal with something, just don't go there. But then just think about it. Then you don't have access to the forest. And if somebody tells you, I saw the wolf like in the city center, then you don't go in the city center anymore. And if somebody says, I saw the wolf around your workplace, then you don't go to the workplace anymore. And then like your world just becomes this little tiny place, and you have no access, you have no freedom of movement. So this idea of, if you're afraid of a wolf, don't go to the forest, it kind of works for a moment. But if you lead your life like that, then your freedom, it just becomes a prison, like there's no freedom anymore. So for me, the transformation is really about, can we learn how to face our fears, to conquer new territories, to explore more of the world, and to like really go out there and get new experiences in new places. And this requires facing the fear. This requires not preventing us going there because of the fear, not stopping ourselves from going into places. So if we talk about that, the resistance actually is just the expression of, I don't want to go to this place. I'm resistant to hear that or do that or think about it because I know that if I go there, I will have to face uncomfortable feelings, and I don't want to do that.
Which is, yeah, and it's an interesting thing, this, isn't it? Because when we don't face uncomfortable feelings, they live within us, you know, for until we face them.
Exactly. And then they have a control over our life, right? They
Yeah.
are like, okay, I'll show up there, and then you cannot go there. And then I'll show up there, and then you are not going there anymore. And it's like they are playing a game with us, like who will win? I know I can win. I know that as long as you're afraid, I can show up anywhere and you will not go there. So yeah. And you know, when we were talking about our today's show, you wrote this kind of idea I've never really thought about in these terms. It's like different types of resistances. Because for me, I recognize resistances, but I've never kind of put them into different categories. And I was thinking, oh, this is very interesting. How is there a way to categorize resistances? Like, could we talk about that actually? Is there something to gain out of this sentence? And I thought that because I recognize resistances very easily, and this is what I'm interested in anyway. And actually, if I had to classify different types of resistances, I would classify them regarding the intensity. So I would like to actually talk about it. Okay. When we are very, very, very resistant to go in a place, which always means to feel a feeling, like there's a feeling we don't want to feel. Then we have this kind of defensive reaction where we can get angry and we are extremely stubborn, not wanting to consider anything towards this direction. So I'll give you an example. When I was very young, I think I was like 18 years old, and it was my first year in university, and I was studying psychology. And I remember our professor said, human beings are social beings, so we need each other. And I looked around and I saw everybody saying, yeah. I'm like, no, I don't agree with that. And I didn't say that, obviously, but I was so angry. I'm like, no, I don't agree with that. This is not true. I can live without needing other human beings. And then I was thinking, oh my God, like everybody's agreeing and I'm just the only one having this crazy reaction. Why am I having this reaction? And I discovered that it was really painful for me to think that my happiness is dependent on other people, because I just felt that if it depends on other people and other people do not give me what I need, then I'm condemned to be unhappy all the time. And I was kind of going out of my adolescence, becoming this young adult, and I just didn't feel like I'm in control. Like I didn't feel like I'm having satisfying social interactions. I just didn't feel happy. I just didn't feel like I was able to get what I wanted. And so unconsciously, I just decided that I don't need people. And if I don't need people, if I can be happy on my own, I regain control over my happiness, right? And obviously, this was very painful for me. I really didn't want to consider this idea at all, because it would just bring me to my past experiences of relationships where I just was not happy and I didn't want to go there. And so that's why I was having this reaction, like this aggressive, very stubborn reaction where there was no place for the idea, even the option of, well, maybe we do need other people. And actually, when we are really resisting something, the test to see if am I resisting something, or is it just a logical response? The test is, could you imagine an instance where something is actually valid? So for me, it would be, could you imagine an instance where you need somebody? Well, I have no problem imagining an instance where I need somebody today. Like I even at that time, I could say, well, of course, if I'm in the middle of a forest and I break my legs, of course I need somebody to bring me home. Like obviously, I cannot do it by myself, right? But when we are unable and unwilling and resisting to even imagine an instance where what we're afraid can be true, then we are really, really, really stubbornly resisting something. But if we really do that, it means that there's no space for our inner growth. So how does the universe help us grow? How does the universe help us transform in these instances? What would you say?
How does it help us? Well, I find the whole story really interesting because I think I kind of like look at the way we program ourselves and each other and through language and stuff like that. And so I think like I've thought about this because I'm similar to you, but you've made me realize why. So my father left when I was 2. And although I saw him most of my life, he let me down. Most of my life, from a very young age into my teens, when the last time I saw him was, he'd say, "Oh, I could definitely come and see you," and then he wouldn't show up. And we'd be sitting there waiting for him all the time. And so I had this similar sort of thing. Is like when people say you need other people, humans are social people, they need other people. I've gone like, well, surely that's all, that's a codependent thing. That's and I think what triggered in me now was because of these childhood experiences. I couldn't rely on somebody, so I couldn't rely on needing someone. I needed my dad when I was younger, and he wasn't there. And so I was like, right, well, I'm going to get over this, and I'm going to not rely on people. But at the same time, I've done all the, well, what if it was the end of the world and you're the last person on earth? The belief that you needed people, or thought you were the last person on earth, the belief that you needed people would be so self-defeating. It would be you spend every day going, oh, there's no one around and I need people. Just the belief in that way wouldn't be powerful. However, it's really great to know people and be connected with people, and many people really, you couldn't have such an amazing life without them. So I look at it on both sides, but how can the universe help us is really the question. So, well, it helps us with our, I'd say intuition is the main thing here for me. That's what helps me identify the truth in my resistances, but it's taken time.
Well, I think that intuition is too subtle to help us in these instances. Ooh. So I would like to come back to what you said, and I really like your example, because you waiting for your father to come and he never coming. This is exactly the situation where you would feel powerless.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
And this
worthless as well, not just powerless.
Yeah. But exactly. So you have this feeling of I'm worthless, but because you are powerless to get out of this feeling, you're powerless to stop the situation. Like you are powerless to be in control in this case, and to reason or stop or change it in any way. This is why you don't want to go there, because you know that as soon as I'm in this feeling again, I have no control. I am powerless. It's like I'm at the mercy of whatever circumstances are, and I don't want to go there. And so this feeling of powerlessness, it's really important to actually gain power over these feelings. So when you feel worthless, like when you feel I'm not important, I'm worthless, I'm not good enough for him to notice me, it is very important when these feelings come up to gain power over it, to allow it to be, not fight it, to see that they clear up, these feelings clear up, to see that I can handle them. And if I gain more power over it, then I'm not afraid to go there as much anymore. But if I am powerless, I don't want to go there because I know I will not be able to deal with it. And because I'm powerless and I don't want to deal with it, I will not go there. And I'm stubborn and I will not do that. Actually, it reminds me. So we have kind of similar stories in this on this aspect. My parents divorced when I was 7, and nobody, not my father, not my mother, had a good idea to explain us what was happening. So my father just left the house with us having no information whatsoever about what's happening. And the way I lived it is that, and I when I was a kid, I was spending very nice time with my father. Like, he taught me how to do bubbles with bubble gum. He told me how to take some branches and make myself an arch and arrows to shoot. Like, I had really nice memories with him. And then the way I lived the situation is that one day he just disappeared and I didn't see him for 2 years. And I didn't understand why. Like, nothing was explained to me. And I have this abandonment wound since I'm little, and I'm aware of it. And actually, when I was like a young adult, I remember having this conversation with the universe. I said to the universe, listen, I know I have this wound. I know it, but I don't want to deal with it. Could you please give me this life so I can enjoy it, and I will deal with it another life? And I was really having this conversation, and I was really determined not to do the work because I was so afraid to do it. So this is the kind of the intensity of resistance, even if we're aware of it. Like, I don't want to go there. And so what happens then is that intuition is not enough, because we would not go there with our free will anyway. Because intuition always leaves us free will. We can listen to it or not. So what would happen in these cases is that these triggering situations would come up, and we would be forcefully put in these situations so we learn how to deal with it. This is what would happen. So when we have these kinds of strong resistances, we will not do the work by ourselves, whether consciously, like in my case, or unconsciously, like it happens most of the time. And then we will have these situations repeating till we are willing to do the work, until we see that actually I can survive these feelings. Actually, my powerlessness kind of diminished a little bit. I feel a bit more powerful. I see that it's not eternal. It will pass. I will deal with it. And then this is how the growth starts. But we are pushed into these situations against our will, because we're not willing to go there, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, but I have to admit, like, this is something I've started to do consciously. So I've been very lucky, I suppose, because I was diagnosed with depression as a teenager. And also I was probably quite lucky that my abandonment issue happened before I'd had enough time to be with my father, so to speak. He left when I was 2. So, you know, it was like I hadn't really built that relationship or the happy memories with him. But one of the things I learned to do with fear is actually evaluate it and face it. So one of the things you learn with anxiety when dealing with a panic attack, and using a thing I've learned, which is called CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is to ask, am I in immediate danger? Yeah, to help calm yourself down. And so it's kind of a method I've used for facing my fears, because, you know, even before I really got into spirituality and understood my purpose, my mission here on earth, and you know what the universe is trying to teach me, I realized I had, because of the depression stuff, I had really bad anxiety. So I had social issues when I grew up. I'd always think that things were going to go wrong when I went out, but I really wanted to go out and I really wanted to be social, because I didn't want to be at home, because it's bring back all the memories of, you know, all the things that I still hadn't resolved. And so I was always out, and I'd always just go, right, well, what's the worst that could happen? Okay, people could make fun of you, people could humiliate you. Are you going to die? No. Okay, go and face it. Never happened what I thought was going to happen, you know. Exactly. And I kept doing it. But I mean, I love your point, and I think this is one of the things that I've only just learned to understand about the law of attraction, the law of vibration, and where focus goes, energy flows, and all these things that point out to us that, you know, when we fear something, we put a lot of energy towards it. We're almost attracting it to ourselves. And there is a reason for that, because we are here to learn. Yeah. We are,
exactly,
that's our purpose, is here, yeah, to come here and transform to the best version of ourselves possible. That's like the mission for all humans. And so when we have a lesson to learn, when we don't learn it, it keeps coming back to us. So that's your point, is that the universe will keep giving us the lesson, basically, keep giving us the lesson or the test, and say, here you go, fear. So the thing you're afraid of, it's here in front of you again.
Exactly, till we learn it. But this is a kind of an extreme case. And we've all been through these phases, especially as young adults, when we have to really face the feelings we didn't know how to deal with. In childhood, we go through these phases. I don't want to face it. I don't want to deal with it. But as we evolve, like, we have less and less of these types of resistances because we've been through these situations. We know we can deal with it. And actually, the technique you just shared, when you ask yourself, am I in immediate danger? And the answer is no. And it kind of calms down your system. It's really a way to gain control. Like, oh, I'm actually not in an immediate danger. I'm not that powerless to these things. Like, on a physical level, I'm in control. Oh, okay, good. Right? And so all these techniques, they really help with, I'm not as powerless as I am thinking. So if we could go a layer lower, where the resistance level is kind of medium rather. So what we would see there is people not wanting to, okay, I put two cases in this. Either people not wanting to talk about feelings, or them not able to describe the feelings. So I just would like to say that we are always afraid of feelings. And one of the ways of not looking at these feelings that we're afraid of is to kind of ignore them in a way. So for instance, I will just take the example of a person whom I had a session pretty recently. And she's a very nice, warm person. But when I looked at her throat chakra, I just saw that absolutely no information is going out. And the throat chakra, on the emotional level, from my perspective, is responsible of translating our heart's energy in the outside world, for people to see our heart, for people to really be able to see into us. And so she's really nice and warm and empathetic, and she makes space for other people's feelings, but she never ever talks about her. She never says, I'm in pain, I'm sad, whatever. And I talked about this with her, and she was like, oh my God, I really thought I'm an open book. And this is a very nice illustration of when we are convincing ourselves about something, so we do not have to look at these things that are painful. So, for instance, if I'm saying, oh, I'm really independent, if I have to say that, it means I am not. There's a problem here. If I'm repeating constantly something, I'm not in peace with this idea. Otherwise, it would not come to my mind. Like if you don't pee in your pants anymore, right? You would not say to people, oh, I'm this grown-up adult, I'm not peeing in my pants. Like, what's the point of saying that?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because it's just, you're done with it, it's clear, and it doesn't even come to your mind. So if you are repeating something, it means that there's a conflict point that brings your attention toward this thing. So there's a tension. There is a tension internally. And you are thinking about that, and that's why you would say that. But most of the time, because we do not want to see things, we would repeat the opposite. Like, I'm kind of trying to convince myself that I'm this independent person. But if I'm constantly saying I'm independent, there's a problem about me being dependent somewhere. Like, it cannot be otherwise. Right?
Yeah.
And so another I will take the same example of the same person. And this is something I also look at when I'm doing my energy readings. I'm looking at the third eye chakra. And what I'm seeing here is intuition, people's ability to foresee the future, but also, do they emotionally project into the future? And so this person, when we started the energy session, I just saw her so unhappy in her present life. And I'm saying, you are really tired of your present life. It just makes no sense to you. And she was like, well, I don't know. She was not resisting it, but she was not connected to her feelings. And then when I said her, you are not projecting yourself into the future at all. You're not even imagining yourself in 5 years from now, not even talking about 20 years from now. And she said, yeah, that's true. I'm not projecting myself at all. I'm not imagining myself even 2 years from now. I'm like, yeah, because you do not like your life now. And she's like, oh, is this the reason? And this is the reason. And so what happens is that this is one of the nice tests to see if we are on our path. If we are on our right path, we would project ourselves into the future. But if we are not, if we still didn't find it, we would not project. And especially if we are stuck and we are supposed to evolve, we are supposed to transform, we are supposed to change it. No way we can project there. Like, I'm not supposed to be here. So I will not project my soul will not allow me to invest myself here energetically. I cannot project myself. So this is a very nice question to ask ourselves, actually. Do I see myself like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? How do I see myself? Where do I see myself?
Yeah, amazing stuff. So I think that's really interesting. I think it's a really crucial point, and I've spotted that with myself and other people, is that they constantly have to say how they are or who they are, or even that they're going to do something. They're probably not going to do it, and they're not feeling that, and they're not, and you have, you need to reassure them. I think it's it's one of those signs of, and now confidence and unconfidence. Is confident is when you don't need to say anything, you just do it and you just be and everything. And unconfident is when you're constantly like going, oh yeah, I'm really good at that, and oh yeah, I can do that. And I've been through all these things, and so that's why I kind of know. And I find that really, I love that what you were just saying there about, so we can't project ourselves into the future. I think from my own experience, right? I think like it takes a long time for our bodies and our minds to accept that things have changed. So from my own experience, I've been an entrepreneur for 8 years. The first 5 years, nearly 9 now, my first 5 years were really tough. And I was just doing it because it was something I could do, not because it was something I was incredibly passionate about. And it was bringing in a good income for my family. And yeah, I never really thought about the future more than maybe next year. Like, I never really saw myself as doing it was because it was something I was really not happy with. But I was constantly telling myself stories like, oh, it pays the bills and I'm good at it, and it started getting results for people, and and all these things. But ultimately, like what I learned in 2020 when I started this phase of my transformational journey, was that I could do something I'm really happy with. And now, I can see myself in the future and literally see myself. Really cool. I'm just going to quickly read some comments if you don't mind. So I've got here Ramsey, who's here with us today. Thanks, Ramsey. He said he believes fear is a healthy feeling. The most important is how we deal with it and how we use it to become a drive in our life. We should not conquer fear, we must use it to our advantage. Do you agree?
So I really think that there are degrees in fear, and depending on the degree, we can work with it or use with it for our advantage. But when the fear is extreme, we are just slaves to the fear. This is what I'm observing, and this is where my discussion with the universe came from when I said, I don't want to do that in this life, right? I was not workable. I was not willing. I didn't sign up for the work. I didn't want to do it. So I really think that it really depends on the intensity of the fear, and you can really work with it and observe it and use it as a very beautiful guide towards your transformation when it's less intense. When you feel strong enough to face it and understand it and do things despite it. But when it's extreme, it's really, really hard. So, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just because I was just thinking about like my own journey, even now, like I said, entrepreneur for nearly 9 years, and I still face fear nearly every day. It's like fear of the unknown because I'm always doing new things that I've never done before. I'm doing the same things over and over, and they get easier and easier, but then I'm always doing new things. And so there's always this fear of the unknown. And it used to show up as resistance, but now I'm aware of it. I'm instantly like, no, it's just normal. And that makes it better for me. Do you think an awareness and understanding of it really is important for people when they can just that helps them face it, or it reduces it as well? Because you were talking about the levels of fear.
I think that where awareness is really important is in these more intense moments, because actually what happens is that if you can push yourself and towards doing things, then the thing that happens is exactly what you described. You just get conscious and unconscious knowing that this is the same situation. I've been there, I've done that, I'll do that again. It's okay. It's not that intense. And actually, I just would like to take this example, and I really find it very interesting. So a lot of times we would say the fear of unknown. And this is a very beautiful example of how we could go deeper into things. So I love the fear of unknown, because if we take time to really discover what's behind it, it can really bring us treasures. So I would like to explain myself. For me, we're never afraid of unknown. Every person has specific kinds of fears, and the unknown kind of encompasses that. And if we take time to really think of things, actually we are afraid of our worst case scenarios in our heads. And if we can identify these worst case scenarios, we're never afraid of the unknown. Like it never happens. Like even if you are alone in the forest and you say, oh, I'm afraid of the unknown, like no, you already imagined all the worst case scenarios in your head, like unconsciously you did. Because the unknown is like the best place to bring all the shadow fears. And so if we can discover what is behind there, we can really get to the really hard fears to work with, the really hard things to deal with for us, and we can really work on that. So I don't think that a lot of us do the work, and we really question what is behind my fear of unknown. But if we can understand it, it's like a treasure box. We can open it and we can really find some jewels and see some things about ourselves that we didn't discover yet.
Yeah, you see, I've kind of probably rationalized fear of the unknown, right? So I've gone, fear of the unknown is a natural thing because we are evolved animals who are designed to survive. Yeah. And so if it's unknown, then it's dangerous. There you go. So it's just, that's how I've rationalized it. And so, yeah, if I'm doing something new, there's going to be about a feeling of fear. There's going to be a feeling of probably doubt as well, because I'm, one of the things, again, I've realized is that worrying, or to a certain extent, isn't such a bad thing because it makes you try and do your best. Yeah. So if it's a work related thing, I've never done it before, there'll be some fear, which will cause resistance, like, oh, just cancel it, don't do it, and then there'll be the worry. But the worry is where I can grab a pen and paper and go, right, how's this going to work? And I go step by step by step by step. Okay, I've thought it through now. That worry caused me to actually think it through a bit further. So there's an interesting comment here that started a lot of conversation, actually. I'm really behind on the comments. There's loads of them, by the way, which is great. So thank you all for your wonderful comments. Right, here it is. Fear is a trigger for fight or flight. For me, I learned to always use it to fight. What are your thoughts on fight and flight? I mean, I've heard of fight, flight, and freeze as well, but then I've also heard recently of fight, fright, freeze, and somebody introduced a new one which made a lot of sense to me, which was to basically think about what you're going to do next very quickly. Discern. So to actually discern, right, what's next, So What are your thoughts on these responses?
Oh, so I am imagining that the person who said, I'm always fighting it, I imagine that the person said, I'm not fighting the other person, or I'm not necessarily fighting the thing that scared me, which is like the response. Like if I'm meeting, I don't know, a dog, I can fight the dog because it scares me, right? So if I'm afraid of going to speak on the stage, it doesn't mean that I will fight these people that are listening to me, right? It means that I will not listen to the fear. I will kind of ignore it and I will do my thing anyway. I suppose that this is what the person said. And I actually challenge myself every time I can to do that. And I am really trying my best. I really think this is the best case scenario. This is the best philosophy we can ever have. And if we could all just choose automatically and say to the universe, listen, the universe, every time I'm afraid, I'll just push me to do the thing I'm afraid of. If we could do that, our transformation and evolution would be so fast. Like this is what we're supposed to do eventually, but it is hard to do it, and that's why the fear is absolutely natural. I totally agree with that. And sometimes we can just say, oh, I don't feel it today, let me try that tomorrow. And I do that sometimes, and I'm trying to be gentle with myself, but my ideal self is the one who always does things despite the fear. And I suppose that this is what this comment was about, and this is such a beautiful philosophy, and I would like to encourage everybody to do that, myself included. But also, when we do not do that, let's not add up more pressure and more negative feelings towards ourselves. Let's just be gentle, because fear is about, I am powerless to deal with this situation. That's why I don't want to do that. So let's not add all these other bad feelings of self-blaming and shame that would make us feel even more powerless. Let's not do that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, like, again, going back to what we were saying at the beginning, is that I believe what we tell ourselves definitely shows up inside us. And so we, over our evolution, we've tried to label and name everything. And this particular response, fight or flight, is from like the study of animals and stuff like that, you know. And I think this is where we are slightly more discerning than most animals. One thing I notice, even animals, is its learned behavior. Yeah, they will react based on a previous experience. Won't be that it's just a natural instinct, this fight or flight response. So they either know that when they hear that tiger in the bushes, they need to fly or freeze. Yeah, they've learned this from their parents, from other animals, from past experiences. And so ultimately what we choose to do is our learned behavior. It's not like a response we are, well, maybe we could be born with it, could be handed down ancestrally. I don't know. But yeah, we do have a choice. We have an option to discern, to go, do I want to fight, flight, or freeze today? Which one do I want to do, you know?
Or do I want to ignore it and do my thing as I was supposed to do in the first place?
Yeah, ignore it and do your thing. That's the one. I love it. Yeah, and I think it's really crucial. Yeah, really, really crucial. So you've got a ton of comments here. And I'm sorry if I'm not getting to your comments. Now, somebody, this is an interesting comment, I think. So Roy's put, he was involved in so many fights at school due to fear. I was quite small, but would never back down. And so I think fear can cause us to react in a lot of different ways. Ultimately, though, you know, it's, you know, what's the best thing to do when you feel fear? That's kind of what I'm trying to get. When you feel fear towards something, what would you do to identify it, identify the cause, and work out what was the best thing you wanted to do to move forward?
So the situation that was described in this comment is a little bit more complex, because here there's another motivation behind. So I am afraid of this person But it's not like I have to face them. I'm choosing to face them because I have another motivation behind. And the motivation is to defend myself or to reestablish the justice, right? So this is a more complex thing. And I think that a lot of times, if we can identify this other motivation to act that we have initially, and then see that either I act according to my values or I don't because of the fear, and I kind of give up on myself. This can be a very nice discernment point. And I made a promise to myself, and I think that these are the situations that are kind of the hardest ones, I think, for me at least. I made a promise to myself to be, last year, to be the most authentic myself, the most authentic self and the most vulnerable person as I can be. And really, the situations where I have to talk about my feelings, to be vulnerable with people, are by far the hardest ones. And I just can see myself how I decide to have this hard conversation with somebody, and then I just want to, but I don't have to do that. It's okay. I can do it tomorrow or another time, or maybe we will not understand me anyways. And I just find all these excuses to not do that, right? And I would sometimes not do that till the next time the situation comes up again, and then I'm even more angry and I need to like talk about it even more because like, and I'm angry at myself because like, okay, you've put yourself again in this because you didn't talk about it the last time as you were supposed to, right? So I think that identifying what is the other motivation to act, what is our motor, and to really decide to stand for our values is really something that can help us sometimes just to reconnect to our core motivation to act. So I just would like to say that we have kind of two situations. I'm not wanting to act, but there's something that scares me that comes towards me, and then I have to fight, flight, or freeze, right? Or I have a motivation to act, but I have an inner resistance. And which one will I choose? And if I can reconnect to my inner motivation more and more and more, this is where I will get the power to act despite the fear. At least that's how I'm seeing things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, two great, like I really love the way you broke that down there into the two examples because they are very slightly different circumstances. It's true. I mean, I face, I face fear and resistance quite a lot every day in my work, pretty much. New things to do, new people to talk to, new things to try, even showing up. And I think one of the things I've learned is that, from what I gained there for myself, what I would do is ask myself the question, what would I do if there was no fear? So, because that way I would remove that from my own deduction. Okay, so if I wasn't afraid, what would I do? That would help me to evaluate, right, what is it that I really want? Yeah, without the fear.
Beautiful. So this is exactly the same goal, to reconnect to your initial motivation, but you would do that by removing the fear and looking at it from a pure stance. This is really beautiful. I like it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, cool. It's just how I get through everything nowadays. Consciousness. That's what I call it. It's like I bring it into consciousness. I bring the thought into a place where I can see it from all the different angles, and then I evaluate. Because I suffered from anxiety and depression most of my life, and then I used to smoke lots of weed and go out partying and drink loads of alcohol and hardly ever sleep, and so I was adding to it constantly. But I wasn't in a world where I could have those kind of vulnerabilities, even where I grew up. People would see you as vulnerable, and then your life would get worse. If you even just had anxiety or depression or just a bit, people would see that and pick on that, and so they'd come at you. So I had to learn to get through these things and not actually be seen. And unfortunately, a lot of it was blocking my emotions for a very long time, which I learned isn't very good. I know now. I let them all now. It's amazing, actually, the difference of allowing your emotions to flow, even the bad ones. Yeah, what we'd label as bad ones or uncomfortable. That's a better word, isn't it? Uncomfortable ones. And letting them flow and observing them and experiencing them is actually such a clearing thing to do, because having had depression, anxiety, and all those things before, when I had them and I was not allowing the emotions to flow, all that was happening, they're building up, and then there's a big explosion of sadness, or a big explosion of anger. And I suppose it's similar with fear as well, that we can often let fear build up till it explodes and comes out as anger or disappointment or things like that.
I would like to just bring up two of my ideas when I was hearing you talking about your experience. So first of all, you just said that what was keeping you avoiding facing your inner world was the fear of being vulnerable. And this is exactly what I'm feeling. I'm feeling that this fear, even people that are successful, people that have everything beautiful on paper, and even in these cases, like the biggest fear is to feel vulnerable, to show up as vulnerable, to show up as weak, to show up as needy, to show up as somebody who's not having it all together. And I think that this is really one of the biggest fears. And a lot of times we just decide not to see that. We just portray ourselves as these people that have everything together and deal with everything perfectly. And we don't want to see our own flaws and our own sadness and our own negative emotions. And I think that, like, being able to be vulnerable, oh my God, this is the biggest fear and also the biggest area of our freedom and strength as well. So I just wanted to say that. I really loved when you said that. And also, I want to say something that I notice a lot in my practice. So you just talked about how feeling feelings allows us to clear them. Mm-hmm. And what I notice a lot of times, and this is a kind of resistance that I would put in a medium level of resistance, is when people would tell me, oh, but I am feeling alone all the time. I am feeling abandoned all the time. I am feeling these feelings. And I would be, no, you are not. Because if you do feel these feelings, they clear up. You feel a relief. What you are doing is that you are trying by all means get rid of it by telling yourself in your mind, why is it me? This is unfair. I am not supposed to be in the situations. I should not feel that. I don't deserve it. Why did this happen? I don't understand what's going on. Like all these thoughts and things that we're saying to ourselves. This is absolute, like the absolute resistance to be in it. This is the resistance by definition to feel the feelings. You are fighting them. But because these feelings don't disappear, you're kind of marinating in it and you just convince yourself that you are feeling it. No, this is not true. When you really feel feelings, you just accept it. You're not questioning it. You don't want to get rid of it. You don't want it to be over. You're not blaming anybody else. You're not even blaming yourself. You're just feeling. And not everybody understands that. And I have this conversation from time to time and really regularly of people being sure that they are feeling feelings while all they're doing is fighting them. Like, so I just wanted to attract everybody's attention on this point because it just comes up very, very often. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I can really relate to. I remember in my teens and even into my 20s and probably at various times in my life, I'd be like, why me? Why me? why has this happened to me? Why do I? Why? And one of the things, like as you were talking, that made me realize is now I'm fully aware. Why me? Because I am entertaining these thoughts, because I am going around in circles, because I'm blocking the emotion from flowing through me with these thoughts of denial and not allowing them. But as I got, and that's holding it in my body, and making me feel this pain. And you know, as I got older, one of the things I really learned to do with myself is that, say, lucky me, I'm able to feel emotions. So many people don't feel their emotions. So many people have a very flatlined life because they're covering up emotions, and to the point that it's almost like they don't feel them anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that's on my mind is like, how does fear play a role in our reluctance to do inner work, for personal transformation? So why are people afraid of transformation, for example, something that's very positive? And
I don't think we're afraid of transformation. I really think we're afraid to feel these feelings that we feel we have no control over, that we feel absolutely powerless when we are in this space. So we're powerless to them. And I don't think and this is actually what is preventing transformation, because a lot of times we just say, I would like things to be different. I would like to be in a different space. I would like to be whatever. And then do this. I can't. So for me, we are not afraid of the transformation. We are really afraid of whatever feelings are there, but we are not really conscious of what are these feelings, and we are not really wanting to explore them. And so when our resistance to feeling these feelings is medium, we can do the inner work, especially with the help of somebody else. And so we talked about this high resistance where I don't want to go there. I'm angry on you if you just tell me whatever related about that, like whatever is in relationship with that. And then we have this medium resistance where I don't want to see that. I would even try to convince myself that this is not an issue for me. But actually we could, with some guidance, we could go there. And it really, so you just talked about this flat line. And for me, what I would see in my work, because I'm really always trying to go down to these deep layers to understand the root cause. What is the feeling that we are avoiding? And so when I would ask people, could you name the feeling you're feeling? People that have this medium resistance, that are living kind of on this flat line, they would say, I'm feeling bad. Well, yeah, could you try to name the feeling? And it is so hard for them to name it and to really feel it. And this is where I'm helping them, because I can feel the emotion. It's easy for me to identify the emotion. So I name the emotion, I'm describing them, and they say, oh yeah, this is it. Yeah, I'm feeling that. And so we need help when we are in this medium resistance level. And also what we would do, and this is very funny, and maybe it's not always easy to see the link, but maybe some people would observe that in themselves. So for instance, let's say, let's take a classical example, okay? Let's say I am in a beginning of a romantic relationship, and I'm not getting news from a person. And I'm thinking, okay, so maybe they're just not interested in me. Or maybe and I'm like, I don't want to feel rejected, or I don't want to feel abandoned, or whatever is my feeling, right? I don't want to feel this feeling. So what I would do, instead of going there and asking the question, going there and having a discussion, going there and getting the answer from this person, what I would do then, so I don't have to face this feeling, I would decide for myself that this person is not interested anyway, and I will walk away. And so we do that so often. I just see that every day. It's like I will not go ask for a promotion because I suppose they just said they have no money, so I suppose the answer will be no. So Okay, so if you're already thinking you'll not get a promotion, why you just don't go and ask for it and just hear the no so you are sure? Like, the only reason why you don't do that is because it would make you feel very bad when you will hear it. Because on the logical point of view, like, there's no reason for that. If you already say that you can accept it, you can accept the answer no. Okay, so go ask for it, get it, and accept it. What's preventing you? The feeling. You don't want to be in the space. And so we do that a lot. And when we have this medium resistance, we would use our mind a lot to give us false arguments to back up our decision to not face the feeling, to not be in the feeling. We would kind of back up. No, I'm sure this will not work, or I'm sure I will get a no answer, so I'm not even doing the thing. And if we can understand what's behind, if we can see, okay, I'm doing that because of a fear of feeling rejected. Oh, shit, okay, I'm really a slave to my fear. I could as well just go and do it, right? Just for the sake of doing it. Yeah. So we are in this medium resistance level. And this is also where the procrastination comes up as well. So when we are in this medium resistance level, we would procrastinate. It's the same scheme, actually. I would just postpone it. I would just find excuses to not find myself in this feeling. And the question is always the same. What feeling am I trying to avoid? If I do something, it will bring me a feeling. What feeling am I trying to avoid?
Yeah, it's a really good conceptual. It's so true. All fear is trying to avoid a feeling that we're not looking forward to. So how do you help people find these patterns in them, and what can you do to help them overcome them?
Well, I have the information directly, so I kind of get the feeling already. So I really try to reconnect people to these feelings so that they are aware and so that they can see to what extent it is influencing them. So for instance, this person, like, I had a session with this person 3 weeks maybe ago, the person who was saying, oh, is this why I'm not projecting towards the future in my own life? I just got an email from her today saying, I'm going on this trip now. And because she really realized, and we were talking about going on a trip because the idea was for her to discover what her heart wants, because she's in a place where her heart is absolutely not happy. So no wonder she's not projecting herself in the future. And we were talking about it. And when we really understand, okay, I'm trying to avoid this, I'm trying to avoid that, and all these situations are about this thing, and I can change it, like I can change it, and then so many things will change at the same time. Because all these situations that keep on repeating, they are about the same subject. So if I change the subject, like everything changes simultaneously. Then it gives you the power to act. Then it reconnects you to all the possibilities. A little bit like you said, what would I do if I had no fear? And then you just realize, oh my God, I could do all these things. And so sometimes I would give people some little practices to really reconnect to their feelings, but I'm not really working with transformation practices. My work is really helping people to become aware of what are their deep resistances and blockages, and where their heart would like to be, and what is their potential, so that then when they see things clearly, when they understand why they are where they are and where their heart would like to go, so that they can take action if they want to. And there are things we talk about, for instance, like talking about your feelings to people around you. Could you try and do that? Could you, instead of ignoring people or just running away from relationships, could you try and talk about it? Like, could you try express your feelings? So we talk about things like that, but I'm not doing on the session. It's really more a reading session. During this session, I'm not really doing any transformative things. I'm just really painting a picture of people's emotional energy and where they're at. And it's a lot of information actually. So I always give them a recording because they need to look at it later on and they will get more information, because when we uncover deep stuff, we need time to digest it.
For
So
sure.
yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's amazing. So the first one was just really an energy reading, and then it would just be suggestions and to bring things to their awareness, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And also when we want things to move, like things, like life brings us confirmation. If we need some more work or some different work, life would bring us people that would help us on these issues. So I'm kind of trusting the universe to bring the right people for them, for more in-depth work if we need to do it, or for like coaches to just help them on everyday level. And I actually do what I'm calling the clarity support session. So some of my clients would just have like us to meet once in a week or once every 2 weeks so we can talk about things and to really gain clarity why the situation happened and what it's all about. So I'm offering this, I call it clarity support, but it's a kind of a coaching sessions. I'm offering this as well. But this work could be done with somebody else or using other practices. I'm thinking about hypnosis, quantum healing, or whatever practices. I'm thinking about Joey, presence manifest, like whatever practices are there, people would find them. And I would just like to finish my classification with the least resistance. How do we see when we are not that resistant and when the work can be done kind of easily? And how does it manifest and what are the symptoms or examples of that? So we talked about the very intense resistance, the medium resistance, and then the resistance which is not that intense, but which is still here, and sometimes how we don't see things. So how we are kind of willing to accept and look into these feelings, but not that much. So how this would manifest, it would be, we would not deny the feeling. We will not fight against the truth that I'm feeling this way or I'm acting this way. What we would deny in these instances is the intensity of the emotion. So we would say, okay, I'm not feeling very happy here, but I'm not admitting to myself how unhappy I am. And usually what this kind of resistance would take place in situations where we have to deal with a pain and we have no issue. Like we have no solution, we have no way to go out of there. So for instance, it could be if a kid is living in a dysfunctional family and they can say, yeah, I'm feeling pain, but because I cannot choose over parents, I would try to say, but then it's not that bad because my parent also has all these beautiful other qualities, right? Or maybe it's okay because I am also guilty of this. Or it's okay because my parents didn't know any better. But then your parents not knowing any better doesn't diminish your pain. Like it still hurts the same if they know better or they don't. Like it still hurts the same because they are doing the same thing. So what we would do is that we would try to diminish our pain by convincing ourselves of all sorts of things, so we do not have to completely connect to the intensity of it. So I would like to give you an example which was very striking to me from my practice. It will be brief, but just so you can understand how it works. I was seeing this young woman, and at the beginning of a session, I'm seeing how people are seeing this world in general. And I'm telling her, there's one thing I'm seeing about you, and which is pretty strange for me. You are a young woman, and I see that you would like to be in a partnership, but it's just inaccessible to you. Like, you're not projecting yourself with a partner, even if you would want to, and you're not seeing yourself living with a partner. And I can see that this is because people in your family die young, like men in your family die young. This is the reason. And she's like, I don't know. So there's no like the resistance is not big. She's not like, no, what are you talking about? There's no reaction like that. But she says, well, you are right. I'm absolutely not seeing myself with a partner. That's true. But I don't see men in my family dying young. I'm like, okay, what about your grandfather? And she says, well, my grandfather died in his 50s, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't have any emotion regarding to that. And I say, and what about your father? Well, my father, he's still alive. And I'm like, okay, for me, there's clearly a resistance, because there is, like, she doesn't project herself and she doesn't find the link. And I'm like, okay, I'm not pushing this any further. I'm sure that we will get to this. And later in the session, like half an hour later, she tells me, oh my God, and recently my best friend, her father died. And I could not, like, go out of my emotions for 2 weeks. And I'm like, this is the feeling, like, this is the feeling that you're having in your system that prevents you from projecting yourself. And she's like, oh, and literally like that. And I'm, okay, tell me what's there about, what it's all about. And she says, oh my God, I don't know how I was not able to see that. But actually, my father has epilepsy. And since I'm a kid, I would like go grocery shopping with him, and he would fall on the ground and would shake, and the ambulance would be called, and he would go to the hospital, and I was not sure that I would see him alive ever again. And this would happen on an ongoing basis. So what happened is that she had to live with a father who she knew could die at any minute of her life. So of course she could not rely on him or put all her energy and love and expectations on him, because she knew that she could lose him anytime. But she could not feel the intensity of the pain as well, because he was not dead physically. And so what happened is that in her mind, she just projected that on all the men. She just thought that any man can die at any time, so I cannot rely on them because they can be just gone. So it's better for me to not count on them at all. But why I'm saying this example is because even when we are talking about this theme and we're talking about the death of young men in the family, she still doesn't see the link. So this is the crazy part for me, because she can talk about this. She's trying to understand what it's all about, but she doesn't see the link because emotionally it's too intense.
Right. Yeah. Do you think it's just the emotional intention, or do you think it has it? Is it to do, is it just that when you've been through all these things, like I've been through depression and anxiety, and I've had to understand it and how it's working and how I'm working, and that now enables me to make the links. But before I wouldn't have looked at, okay, this happened, that's why this is happening later on in my life. Like, my dad left me, so that's why this happened. I got laughed at on stage, and so that's why I'm afraid to go and show up on stage. I wouldn't have necessarily made those links because, well, one of the things is because they're things that I've just put away for a long time, but I wouldn't have known there was a link. If I don't know there's a link, how can I make a link?
So I like what you're saying. And so this is exactly the situation where you don't know that there's a link, so you're not making it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when somebody comes and tells you, this is the link, and you are still saying, well, I'm not actually seeing it,
Okay, get you. Yeah, so you're still in quite serious denial. Yeah.
So there is like, you are willing
So,
to think about it, right? You are not completely resisting it, but it's like, if I would see the link, like she it was a session, it was not an online session, so it was a real session. So she started really crying, and I hugged her at this time because it was really, really intense. But if it is hard, because like, we are in a kind of professional setting and we're talking about things, and then if you want to really reconnect to this pain, you have to dive really deep, and then you know that you would just, so it's really about the intensity of a feeling, right? You don't want to feel it, you don't want to reconnect to it. On a logical level, you are willing to think about it, you are willing to say, oh, okay, there's a similarity, there's something. But yeah, so for me, this is, the person is willing to do the work, but they need to be willing to go down and really reconnect to the deep stuff. So this is for me a kind of a less intense resistance, which allows space for thinking, and that would be lifted eventually anyway. But sometimes we just don't sometimes it's just hard for us, even if, and that's what we would do, like in every day. Like if I'm in a work I don't like and I'm afraid to change it, or I'm afraid to quit it, then I would just convince myself that it's not that bad. I would just try to find, like, yeah, but I'm not that far away from home, and I'm still learning new things, and my colleagues are pretty nice, and they have good food on lunchtime, and like all these things, right?
see the
That just,
positive.
yeah, so so that you kind of don't feel the pain that intensely. So this is for me the least, like a resistance on a lower level, but which is still present here. But when we are there, at least we are willing to talk about it, right? At least we would from time to time say, oh, I'm really tired of this work. So we are willing to talk about it, but we just don't want to see the gravity of the situation, right? Because if we do see, then we have to admit that we have to do something about it. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've spent a lot of my life going through things like this, and one of the things I've learned to do is similar to what you do, but I'd always sort of go, it could be worse, you know? So it could be worse. I could not have a job. I could be working in this. So and so is always moaning about their job. Imagine if I was working there, or, you know, so there are all these other things. So we kind of touched on what to do with fear, but I think like we've got a question here. Once you have this revelation, what do you do to move it forward? And so, yeah, I mean, what are some practical steps that somebody can take to confront their fears and overcome resistance, other than the mind things? There are other things that people can do.
For me, it's really about going through it, sitting with it, and seeing that I am able to cross it and be safe and sound on the other side. And I feel that when we start doing this work, doing it with somebody is really precious, because not only you're not alone, but also the person can really guide you there. Because like the characteristic of the fear is like, I'm going the opposite direction. Like, no way I am looking into this wolf's eyes. I just want to run away. So the person, a competent person being here, helps you to really see into it. You're not alone. You feel like you are in a safe space, and somebody understands you. So it's already easier to go through it. And with time, what we learn is that, okay, I can feel these feelings I don't want to feel. I can be with them. I can sit with them. I can cry. I can shout. I can write, whatever I'm doing. And I know that I will get a relief afterwards. And this is the sign that we really went through the process, is that it always brings us relief. always. It feels lighter each time. And if we repeat it, we just know that it will feel lighter when we go through that. And we can trust it because that's what happens every single time, and that's what will keep on happening. So for me, learning how to go through these feelings is very important. But at the beginning, it's not that easy because we are really resisting to even identify these feelings. We just really stay on this general level. I'm feeling bad. And what do I do if I'm feeling bad? I'm still not connected to my feelings deep enough so I can go through it. So I may need some guidance at this point. But when you know your fear, when you can identify it, when you can say, okay, it's the same situation. I know where it comes from. I know the problem. I know that I'm supposed to sit through it. I'll just do it. Okay. Then this is how we transform.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is like one of the things I'd like to say, if anybody is facing fears, is that it's all the end. Once you face your fears, there's actually something really amazing waiting on the other side. Like number one question before you face your fears, though, is, am I going to put myself in immediate danger? So just so you make sure, if the answer is yes, then don't do it. But if the answer is no, then let's look at facing the fears a little bit. So just didn't want to advise anyone to do anything dangerous there. Public safety announcement and all those things. So it's been a really great show today, really powerful. Is there anything else you would like to talk about specifically before we finish the show?
Maybe just one little thing.
Sure.
And I think we could end on that. I would like people to be aware of something. A lot of times we ask ourselves the question, should I follow my heart or my mind? This is the wrong question. The question is always, should I follow my heart or my fear? The mind has nothing to do there. The mind never decides of a direction. The mind just decides how to go there. It's like a train or a plane. It just brings you to a destination, but the destination is always chosen by the heart or the fear. And so if we can really, when we are taking decisions, if we can really be honest with ourselves and clearly state, if I'm choosing this, what am I afraid of in this case scenario? I'm afraid of this, of that, of that. Okay, if I'm choosing this, what am I afraid there? I'm afraid of this, and that. This is what brings us clarity. This is when we stop bullshitting ourselves by all sorts of arguments like that are not even like related to the core issue. Like, I need to change my job. Yeah, but the food is so nice on lunch. Like, this is not a relevant argument for your situation. Stop doing that, right? Ask yourself what you're afraid of if you need to quit this job. Ask yourself and be honest with yourself. And ask yourself what you're afraid of if you stay in this job. And like, if we can really see the fear and if we can lift it. So I'm coming back to your strategy to say, what would I do if I was not afraid at all? Then we can really, we cannot reconnect to our heart because the fear always shouts louder. Like, the fear is like this bully who has a baseball bat. And if the heart starts to argue, it just comes and hits it on the head. And then the heart says, okay, I'll just keep quiet. Like, this is the relationship between the heart and the fear. So we need to identify the fear and to lift it so that we can reconnect with the heart. And the decision is never about the mind. It's never about the arguments. Never, ever, ever. So don't lie to yourself. It's only between the heart and the fear. That's it.
I love it. Absolutely love that. And I can so relate to that in a lot of the things I'm doing. So like I said, go back to the entrepreneur journey. When I started my business, I started because I needed a better income to support my family. And initially I started off building business directory. Then I started doing all these other things. And it didn't really start out how most entrepreneurs start out in our world of healing and coaching and therapy and that kind of thing. Because generally you have to put together an offer. And I see a lot of people having fear about, is that offer going to work? And even as a marketer, I've gone from being a digital marketer to mentoring and coaching people. It's like, okay, now I have to put together an offer. And there's always this fear of, is that offer going to work? And one of the things I've learned to do with myself is to sit there and go, well, if I don't try, I'll never know. You know, so that's number one. Yeah. And then if I am thinking about, I make decisions. Let me try and rephrase this. I make decisions based on what I call my heart. You know, like you're saying here, and it makes so much sense the way you described it here, because if I'm thinking about the money or the success more than the enjoyment, yeah, then generally that tends to be coming from my fear, is what I've noticed. Yeah, but if I'm thinking, is this something I really want to do? Is this something I want to give to people? Is this something I want to connect with people? Am I going to enjoy this experience? Then that's when my heart's involved. And often there's even more risk, it feels, to my fear when I'm following my heart, because my heart's like, that doesn't make any sense. You know, that's maybe what you want to do. Is it going to work? Who knows? You know, and it can. Now I've been doing it for like the last 9 months or so. It's a bit more exciting now. that unknown is like, oh, it's exciting. The worst that can happen is if you fail. And for example, for most of you watching and most of us, we're on the internet. Most people forget when you fail because you just disappear. You know, it's not like it's you that remembers it. It's you that feels it, and you feel it forever if you don't learn the lesson from it. Yeah. Not everybody else. So even our brains go, oh, everyone's going to see us fail. No, we're the only ones going to feel the failure.
Exactly. And this is so beautiful. And when you said, if I don't do that, I will not know. This is really the mindset of that has been, I suppose, described in this comment when the person said, I'm just fighting it. But it's like, I'm not fighting with fear. I'm just ignoring it. I'm just doing it anyway. And if we can get into this state, it's so beautiful. But of course, like this state becomes natural the more we do risky things and the more comfortable we are with these feelings. But at the beginning, it's like we need the kick in the ass to start doing it sometime.
Yeah. I mean, I've been, I'm lucky, like I said. I've been kicking myself in the ass since I was 13 years old and told I was depressed. So it's just all of these things for me were just a bunch of bad habits I picked up and kept using to the point I was sad. I didn't learn other things. Now I've learned more things. I'm not sad anymore. You know, I can still make myself depressed. Yeah, I can still make myself anxious. You know, I can, and if I understand how these things work now, if I overwork, undereat, don't sleep enough, do no exercise, and you know, smoke a lot, and yeah, I'm probably going to end up depressed. It's that simple. If I procrastinate too much, let everybody down, and like do things that other people shouldn't know about, then yes, I'm probably going to suffer from anxiety. So, you know, otherwise, it's possible just to clear these things. It is all about learning. It's about facing fears, learning from them, understanding them, observing them, creating that awareness of them, and then observing them, and then accepting them, because we all have them, I think. And then
we do. And this is why it's natural. It's really a natural feeling, but we have the power to decide what we do with it. And it is natural, and it is okay sometimes to listen to our fear and just say, I'll do that tomorrow, it's okay. But the more we can just live despite it, the more powerful and happy we are. I do agree with you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Aurelia, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for your questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you to the amazing audience today. So many comments today, nearly 100 comments today, and I've not even been replying, so that's going really well. Thank you to everybody watching. If you're watching the replay anywhere, please feel free to ask or any questions in the comments, or join in the comments, and we will get back to you as well. So it's been an awesome show. I'm back next week on Food for Thought with Krishwan, and we are going to be talking about manifestation and among other things. And then this week, I'm back with the Conscious Creators on Thursday in the Conscious Creators community group, and we're talking about labels this week. So it's going to be another great show. So thank you all for your patience and presence, and thank you, Aurelia.
Thank you so much. Thank you.